Tell me what
I'm sure you've heard of Anne Frank, who lived with family and friends in the attic, or Hitler, the leader of the Nazi, or Winston Churchill, who led Great Britain to victory in World War II. But there's someone that I feel is just as important as they are and has never gotten the recognition. Her name is Irena Sendler. She was a female social worker during World War II with access to the Warsaw Ghetto. World War II began on September 1st, 1939, with the German invasion of Poland. The Warsaw Ghetto was later created October of 1940. She was greatly influenced by her father, who was a doctor to poor Jewish families. He worked at the Holy Spirit Hospital and later his own practice in Adwak. He died in 1917 before the war began. Irena was appalled by the conditions of the Warsaw Ghetto. This is what they looked like during the roundup. She then joined the Zagota, which was a council to aid the Jews. She passed into the ghetto as a member of the Epidemic Control Department. She reestablished contacts and brought food, medicine, and clothing from people that her father's practice had previously cared for. She began rescuing children that did not have families, or orphans, because they were the lowest chance of her getting caught because there was no one watching out for them and it was just them alone. She snuck them out in potato sacks, coffins, ambulances, and underground tunnels. This is one of the children that she was helping to get out. And then this was what a potato sack looked like then. She would place a child in it and it wouldn't look any different than when she went in because she was taking food in. So she just threw it over her shoulder, walked right out the gate, and no questions were asked. Coffins were not as common because the Jewish weren't given a proper burial during that time, so they were normally sent to be cremated. And so that one was less likely. Ambulances were very rare. If there was Nazi being taken out in an ambulance, then occasionally she could sneak a child on, but that was a very rare occasion because that was a high risk of getting caught. The underground tunnels was also more rare just because with the tunnels on the other end, there's only one way out, and that posed a risk for her to be caught as well. She was able to get some adults to a church on the outskirts of the ghetto where they would go in with their old names. They would get a name change, they'd go down the other side, and they'd have no ties to their Jewish names. She eventually began asking parents if she could help their children. She promised them a shot at a better life, but not a promise that they would make it. She said she could not promise someone a life, but she wanted to make it as good as she could. Irena kept a list of names in a jar that she buried underground in hopes to reunite the families after the war. That list was later found, and that's part of what led to her arrest during that time. The children were rehomed in covenants or non-Jewish families, which was hard to come by just because the non-Jewish families were so scared of being caught by the Nazi and killed that often they would be turned away without a second thought. She was arrested in October of 1944, shortly after the largest uprising of Jews ever in a concentration camp that took place in the Warsaw Ghetto. She was then bribed out by the Zagota in February of 1945. There's no real reason as to why it took so long. It is believed that with what the Nazi was asking of them, they couldn't get it in time, and by February of 1945, the war was beginning to end. It is believed that she rescued with Zagota 2,500 children and alone 500. She was later married and had 2 sons, Adam and Andre, one of which died in infancy, and 1 daughter, Janina. She was later named the Righteous Among the Nations in 1965 and received the Order of the White Eagle in 2003. Those were both Polish awards. She was not well known in the United States until a group of 4 kids from Kansas were doing a History Day project. Their names were Megan Stewart, Liz Combers, Sabrina Coons, Jessica Shelton. This is a picture of them. They actually ended up traveling over to Poland to meet her, and that was the first time that her name was brought to the United States. After that, she was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2008. This was about the same time. That's just a picture of her by herself. She did not win the Nobel Peace Prize, but she was still nominated, which was a big honor for her. There was a movie made about her It's called The Courageous Heart of Irena Sendler. It was made here in the United States kind of as a memorial and a recognition after what the History Day students had done. She later died that same year as she was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize on May 12, 2008 in Warsaw, Poland at the age of 98.